Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Battle Worth Fighting. Today's guest is Billy Molls, Alaskan hunting guide, and I'm going to give a quick introduction of Billy's accolades. Billy was born and raised on a Wisconsin dairy farm. He had a longing for adventure that led him to Alaska. For the past 24 years, Billy has guided big game hunters from around the globe for brown bear, grizzly bear, moose, and caribou, Dall sheep, and wolf. Having lived more than 8 years of his life in a tent in the wilderness, Billy has documented his adventures through his award-winning Modern Day Mountain Man video series. Hunters and even non-hunters are sure to enjoy Billy's riveting tales of airplane wrecks, grizzly encounters, and be inspired by his life-changing experiences. Billy, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Jeff. Good to see you.
Glad to have you. You and I have talked about the opportunity over the last year and a half as we've built the friendship to have you on our show and share a little bit about your testimony of how your adventures in the wilderness opened the adventures in your faith. So the floor is yours, Billy.
Yeah, well, just growing up very much in a rural area, going to church semi-regular as a kid, just because that's kind of what, seemingly everybody did. I went to a Lutheran church, confirmed, and like a good Lutheran, pretty much quit going to church after I was confirmed, semi-regular. Just had a lot of questions, a lot of doubt. But I don't know, but I never let it go, I never really dismissed it, I would say. But just had a lot of questions. But I loved trapping. I loved the outdoors. And kind of more recently, I think maybe part of the reason why I loved it is we were poor. Most people at the time wouldn't have looked at us and thought we were, but my parents worked very, very hard. Every nickel we made went back into the farm. And I remember, I know that I could feel the stress of my parents when I look back at it now. We were very much on the verge of bankruptcy regularly. It was very tense. Farming is a tough way of life. And, most of the farmers around us didn't make it. But my parents just worked very hard. Me and my brother, my sister, we all worked very hard. But I look back now and I think I recognize probably maybe the biggest reason why I loved it is when I was hunting or trapping with my dad, I got to see him at peace. And again, that's something that I maybe just kind of recognized here a year or two ago. And so that was time that I just got to really share with my dad. But it was also where I felt free. I noticed that when I had stress in my own life, or wouldn't even say when I had stress in my own life, it was just any time that I was free, I wanted to be out in nature, just that calm, that peace, that connectivity. I didn't really recognize those things as a kid, but I was drawn to it. And, you can watch some of my videos on YouTube and you can hear a lot of these stories. So I don't want to repeat it too much. But I didn't want a regular job. I, probably I'm quite certain I would be diagnosed with ADHD. I had teachers told my parents that I had that. School was always easy for me. It just didn't hold my attention. Got in a fair bit of trouble. I did a fair bit of bullying. I just kind of I remember that was one thing I'd hear in the Bible, that always seemed very odd. But when I look back at my childhood, that's probably a fair bit felt. Born with a cleft lip and palate, I'd get picked on by older kids a little bit. And I was pretty conscious of that. And I think maybe to combat that, I also bullied kids because I was insecure and didn't want people to bully me for that. But it was like the wilderness. When I was alone, I could kind of escape all that and everything made sense. So I went to a guide school right out of high school in Montana. And I would say that was the big leg of the journey. And leaving home, I think, Jesus told Nicodemus that a man cannot enter the kingdom of heaven but to be born again. And if you're going to be born again, that means that you're going to be a new creation. And that means that your old creation, who you were before, has to die. And I think, and in my opinion, that's something that I noticed in the Christian church. I mean, I never, somebody may have told me that, but nobody ever explained that to me in a way that I ever understood it. That was something that I 100% figured out on my own, or, you know, some people probably alluded, and I was given little nuggets of that probably, but I never remember anybody really sharing that with me. And that's really what it took for me to leave my family farm when I was 19 or 18, 19, I guess. It was hard. I mean, it was so scary. I remember I started crying. I was driving out to Montana. You know, we didn't have cell phones in those days. I just had a big Rand McNally map, and I was so ripe for failure, but I almost felt that I didn't have any other options. I never really gave myself another option. I think if you do anything, is something has to die to give birth to something new. And that was the beginning of the journey. And when I look back at it, to do anything that's scary or big or just seemingly impossible, there's almost a death has to happen before you'll get to that, like, do or die scenario, you know, that commitment. And I mean, that was the toughest part, one of the toughest parts of my journey. I could probably narrow it down to maybe a dozen, like, chapters almost, if you will, to, like, you know, where I am today. And I would say that was the biggest thing that I learned right there, is to do anything in life, to make any change, something's got to die. So went to Alaska as a kid, or, you know, as a young man, loved it. And had a girl that I dated off and on, broke up with her, just was really hard, the long distance stuff, and went through a period of depression where it just didn't make sense. You know, I had no direction, wondered if I made the biggest mistake of my life, you know, losing her or not giving up my lifestyle for her. And during which time I went through a period for about 2 years where, when I was back home in Wisconsin, I'd come home every winter. The depression would get so bad. And the second winter, particularly, I thought of taking my own life, oftentimes on a minute by minute basis. You know, I mean, I was just clinging to life minute by minute. I thought of jumping off of buildings. I'd do construction work, and I'd be up, you know, 3 stories and just frozen ground beneath me, and just wondered, man, if I just dove head first, landed on my head, I would die. You know, I didn't want to be a cripple. I would have rather died. And I mean, that thought was with me all the time. And again, a lot of these things you can find on my YouTube channel, and this story in particular of how I got through that depression. But that was a little bit of kind of I don't know if I'd say an eye opener, but it just seems like things make sense to me in nature. And when I was going through that rough bout of depression, I'll just kind of make a long story short, I started crying out to God. And I was alone for 5 days. And it seems like a lot of my stories really happen on my spiritual walk. A lot of them seem to start out, I was alone for 5 days, but, and I was crying out to God to give me help, to give me direction. And if he was real, that I needed him in my life, because I was going nowhere. I was wasting space, and I was just a drain on everybody that I was around. And I saw this cow, moose, and a calf crossing a river. And I'd seen them almost once or twice a day when I was there. And I remember when that cow looked back to check on her calf, it was just a light switch moment for me, as I recognized that any day now, this was a spring hunt, and that calf was actually a yearling, and the cow was pregnant. She was about to have new babies, or a baby. And then I knew that nature is black and white. There's no gray area in nature, that any moment that cow, or any day when the time was right, when her instinct, when nature took over, she would ostracize her yearling. And then all of her effort would go into her newborn calves. And that yearling would have to survive on its own. It would have to fend off wolves, bears, wolverines, you name it. And nothing would ever feel sorry for it. It would never feel sorry for itself. Nothing would ever help it. And it would strive to survive and maximize its potential until the instant it died. And I recognize in the moment is just like nature is the language that I feel that I best understand. And that event right there snapped me out of 2-year depression just like that. I just realized, Billy, if you're going to kill yourself, get it over with. If not, move on. And that was it. And, I would say that I've had, probably, between a half dozen and a dozen experiences similar to that. It was fair to say that, God's worked on me in other ways, but for me, it seems like I'm probably more receptive when I'm in the wilderness. I don't believe one has to be in the wilderness to see these things. But for me, it's like the only time that I can really be still and know that He is God, to get outside of the rat race of the real world and really to see His handiwork, to listen to Him, and for me to just calm my mind enough. And that's probably why I love it, and that's still why I do it. Is I just feel I feel like I'm in the palm of His hand very, very often. Everything seems to make sense there. And so now this is my 25th year of guiding. I've never, when I was a young man, I dreamed of shooting a big brown bear and a moose and a sheep and all these things. But 25 years later, I haven't shot anything for myself. I really don't have any desire to do that. I'm able to take my passion, something that I love, and all the mistakes that I've made through my years of guiding, and I'm able to make another human being's dreams come true. And that's more now, 25 years later, I recognize that that's more rewarding than doing it myself. I still hunt myself, but if I'm up there, I'd rather take all the mistakes that I've made, the things that I've learned, and use it to enrich someone else's life. And as a byproduct by that, these hunters that I've guided, they've blessed me immensely in a variety of different ways. So that's just kind of a long story there, or maybe not the direction you wanted me to go. So please steer me wherever you want me to go. But I guess that's just a bit of an insight for me, is just I feel that when I look back at it now, I almost believe that I see how the stars aligned. I believe that God called me to the wilderness, that's my purpose here. And I feel that is my purpose, to witness to outdoors people, or people in general. But that's kind of my shtick, if you will, my brand. But more than anything, it's just, I feel I have so much insight and experience in hunting and in nature that's how I can best give people a different perspective from a man who really had more questions about God. I probably have more questions now than ever. I suppose it's just like anything in life. About the time you think you got it figured out, you get humbled. But I know there's a lot of people that enjoy outdoors and hunting, and I've got many lifetimes of experiences, comparatively speaking, to most people, and I do enjoy being able to just try to really share with people what it's like to experience the wilderness. And that's what I love, is the wilderness, what I call the wilderness immersion, because it's not about the trophies. The magic happens in the immersion. The longer you're there, the more days that you're in the wilderness, away from the programming of the world, advertising, music, TV, all that stuff. That's where you can kind of decompress and kind of get to know yourself, get to know God. That's what I love about it.
That's an incredible story. So as you've now coming up on what, 20, you said 24, 25 years of guiding?
Yep, just finished my 25th year.
What's next, Billy?
I guess if I've learned anything in life is maybe to not, I shouldn't, I don't know, probably slow down and wait for direction from God. I'm continuing to do what I'm doing, but I'm probably in a season where, yeah, not entirely sure. My girls are 11 and 12, so I'm slowing down a little bit. I've finally gotten to the place where making a living where I have a little more freedom. Up until recently, it was pretty much rush, 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 and um, never had a real job and a steady paycheck by any means. Always more or less self-employed, doing construction work in the off season, videos that I've done. Now I've finally gotten that out there enough and gotten good enough at that where I'm, making a living at all of the things that is modern day mountain man, hunt consulting and public speaking. I do a lot of Christian outreach speaking, so I'll continue with that. But yeah, I'm probably at a season where it's probably time to just start listening a little bit more. And I think that's for a man who's, fighting a spiritual battle and being a Christ follower rather than just a Christian, what the world would say a Christian, but to be a Christ follower. Boy, it's a tough thing. And finding balance as a husband, as a father, a provider, and I don't know. I'd say it's probably comes back to love God above all things and love your neighbor as yourself. So yeah, I think can just continue. What my plan is. I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. I've got an employee now for Modern Day Mountain Man who's helping with the administrative stuff, giving me a little more freedom. But yeah, I think the day that I accepted Christ, the only way to describe it was, and that's probably a good one to not maybe take time here, but the first episode on my Trust the Guide series, I give my testimony. But I know the Lord. I didn't hear an audible voice, but it was internal and loud enough where he just said, share this. And so I guess I don't think that that's next. That's probably always, that's it. That is next. Oh, I'm going to do that. Or if there's going to be any changes of how I go about that, I guess we'll just kind of see. But I always come back to Peter, when you hit transition or seasons in life. I always come back to what Peter said, Lord, you have the words of eternal life. To whom shall we go? So any times it seems like when I'm going off in my own direction, that's the one thing that I think every Christ follower has to come back to is show me the way, and I guess that's why I started Trust the Guide, because I look at it as when we're hunting, I'll be doing things that I know by experience, even though they're not working right now. This is the way to do it. This is the only way. And my hunters will doubt that if things aren't working out the way they think they should. And I know the consequence of that in a hunting standpoint because I've experienced it enough. And so I guess that's where faith is tested and grows. And I'm to the point oftentimes now where I get excited in hunts when we hit trials and tribulations. When things are going wrong, I get excited because I know that when that happens, you can now have one of the best hunts of your life. Because when you go out there and you open up the tent flap on opening day and there's the animal you're trying to hunt, yeah, that's all fine and good, but that's not one of the adventures that stick with you. That's not one of the adventures where you grow, where you learn, where you form a bond with the people that you're with. Life, everybody thinks that life everybody in life wants mountaintop experiences. Every hunter wants the 40-inch ram or the 10-foot bear. But the greatest experiences are in the swamps, they're in the valleys, they're in the climbs, they're when things are ugly and when you're miserable at the time. But conversely, down the road, those are the greatest things in life. And don't get me wrong, when things go wrong in life, I don't always see that in real life. And even in hunting, there's times where I'm miserable. But yeah, just one thing that came to me this morning. I was out on a walk with the dogs and it was dark outside. I kind of like the days are short now, so I'm out before the sun. And the dogs pay attention more. If you ever ride horses, you'll notice that the horses pay attention when it's dark, because there's just an eeriness to it. And I realized that, so often you'll see people, wearing a chain or a shirt, just like me, God's country, you're proclaiming that you're a Christian. Guys will wear a necklace with a cross. What I realized, or the saying that came to me, is don't just wear it, carry it. Carry the cross. And so what's next? I guess is just carry whatever cross, the Lord puts before me, whatever he wants me to carry, whatever it is in this season of life that he wants me to carry, because I'm not there yet. I'm still wandering in the wilderness. I haven't made it to Canaan. He brought me out of Egypt, but he's got to let me wander for a while because I'm not trusting him. So I'm not entirely sure what's next, but I think for me, where my big focus is on my family, on my marriage, and yeah, shutting out the world and yeah, carrying the cross daily. That's what's next for Billy Molls.
For the man that's going through a valley in his wilderness, what word of encouragement would you give him to keep pressing on?
Oh, yeah. Glad you asked me that, because I probably need the advice myself. I think it's Matthew 6:33. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. I never had a stable income, never had disability insurance. And I pushed hard I had a goal to own a house by the time I was 40, because I never had a steady paycheck. My wife, once we had kids, she quit working to take care of the kids. So it was a sole income. And I recognized, particularly, 5-6 years ago and all the years before that, guiding was the lion's share of our income. Well, if I broke a leg or anything more serious than that, would even be way worse. That would be kind of catastrophic of sorts. So we saved, and anytime we owed money, we tried to make double payments. Never really was a big fan or thought too much of a stock market thing. I always figured I'd rather trust myself than handing money over to somebody else. And we got to the point where we built our new house, which you've seen, and got to the point we were able to pay it off, owe a little bit of land on the land, but basically we owned the house. And I finally had this room to breathe. I felt like after my whole life, I'm in my early 40s, and I'm kind of like, oh, we've arrived. I felt proud. I felt this sense of satisfaction. My wife and I both did. It's kind of a dream. It was like this dream came true for us. And I wouldn't say that it only lasted minutes. Maybe it never even really happened at all. But it was like air out of a tire, and I look back at life, that it's so many things of the world that we chase. I think a big reason why a person has to chase their dreams, nothing wrong with a dream. I mean, as long as your dream isn't hurting other people and, something you want to do, I think it's a great thing. But when I look back at it, it's so often the attainment of anything worldly, particularly, and not even necessarily necessarily a bad thing. I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to own a house and being, financially secure for you and your family, but it's never as good as you think it's going to be. And that's maybe one that I'm maybe still kind of reeling from, maybe, is kind of figuring out what's next. I honestly, modern day mountain man, I didn't, in that regard, I didn't dream big enough. Because once I got to the level, modern day mountain man's grown beyond anything that I ever imagined it to be. I really never wanted to be famous. I maybe struggle with that a little bit. It's got its challenges, being in the public eye, and I'm still not, I really don't even consider myself famous, but it's enough to where I feel differently. I feel that I'm looked at differently, and that's my problem. That hasn't been necessarily easy, but it probably keeps me in check, keeps me honest, or to a degree, it keeps me, holds me accountable, I guess is the best way to put it. So, so I think I am at a stage where a crossroads to kind of figure out, all right, what is that? Because it happened fast. Like 3-4 years ago, we were just kind of hanging on financially by the skin of our teeth. And honestly, it seems like when I stepped out in my faith, when COVID came and all my speaking engagements canceled and I had no way to make money, that's when I started Trust the Guide, posting stuff on YouTube. Not that I made any money off of that really, but just like God opened other doors, and that very next year, our income doubled. I mean, it was crazy. I mean, the Lord's worked in many crazy ways. One is, we decided that we were going to give away pocket-sized New Testaments with every purchase on our website. If anybody wanted them, we'd give them a free New Testament, because somebody gave me one like 15 years earlier. And in my time in the wilderness, I would read that. And that's really where my faith blossomed, when I was in the wilderness and I actually read the Bible. So anyways, come to find out that these things were going to cost about $9 a piece. And I wanted to buy 1,000 of them, but we didn't have $9,000. Went to a speaking gig in Mississippi. And my wife was kind of looking for these these pocket Bibles, and she was going to buy them. And she said, we don't have the money. And I'm like, well, we'll put them on a credit card. We'll figure out a way. Something will come up. And 2 weeks later, we get a check in the mail for $10,000. This guy that I met in Mississippi, never told him that story, nothing like that. But there's a check for $10,000. So yeah, those trials and tribulations, that's where you just got to surrender to God. So whatever you're going through, to get back to your question of trying to encourage people, is if you saw your way out of it, it wouldn't take faith. If you knew how it was going to go down, I mean, and I'm in a tribulation in my own life that it just like I'm struggling just to hand it over to God, to surrender to Him. I want to worry. I want to fix it. As my wife would say, I'd want to control it. But I think as a man, we want to fix things. We take pride in that. And I don't think that's always a bad thing. I mean, pride can definitely get you in a lot of trouble. But I'd say for me as a man, the hardest thing is to just let it be. And that's where knowing God's word is paramount, to know that, okay, am I doing everything that I can do? Am I doing everything that I should do? Just like caribou hunting this fall, we weren't seeing any caribou. My hunter's like, should we be doing something different? I'm like, no, it's the barometric pressure is dropping. It's going to snow. When it snows, those caribou are going to move. We need a weather change. And I knew that if we waited, it would happen. And that's exactly what happened. We got snow, told my hunter, I said, we're not even going to make it to the glassing hill and we're going to have a caribou down. Sure enough, we're walking to the glassing hill and we spot this band of caribou, boom, dead. But as we go through life, that's what makes life an adventure. And following Christ is the greatest adventure of all, because He is going to lead us places. My hunters, they always want to know, it's like, well, where are we doing today? We're sheep hunting, let's say. Well, we're going to head that way. Well, then what? I'm like, well, I don't know. I can't tell you, because what's the wind going to do? What are we going to see? I don't know those things. There's way too many variables. All we can do is head that way. And then their job is just to follow me one step at a time. And so you're course correcting the whole time. And it's exactly what it's like following Christ, or the way that I understand it is, all you got to do is put one foot in front of the other and follow him one step at a time, because he knows the way, you don't. He does know where he's going, but you don't. He's never going to give you the whole picture. And that's where your faith, that's where your, I want to say consternation. I don't know if that's the right word, but that's where, I mean, that's where your foundation is going to be built, is in those valleys, in those swamps, when you just have nothing left. You can't even think about anything. All you can think about is just one step at a time. I mean, that's where I want my hunters at times. I just want them to kind of, sorry to say it, but keep their mouths shut and just follow along and trust me, allow me to do this. I think that's the way God works with us. So yeah, trust him. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Romans 8:28 is certainly a good one. All things work to his glory, to those who are called according to his purpose. Romans 12:2, do not conform to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Is allow him to do that work in you. I think as a Christ follower, that's what it's all about, is that, no good hunting adventure goes according to plan. There really can't be. You got this idea of what you want to do, but it never unfolds the way you plan it. And that's what makes it exciting. That ramble's over.
You are not shy of words, Billy. I love it. All I got to do is ask a few probing questions and you go. You're the easiest guest I've ever had. I love it.
Well, yeah, I know I get off on tangents sometimes, but yeah. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, is make things like really, really concise. That's, I don't know if it's entirely a weakness of mine, but that's something that I could work on. But
well, I think so. The irony is, I met you by reaching out to you on one of your YouTube videos that I saw online. I watched one of your Dall sheep hunts with the young guy. I think he was a cop or a police officer. I don't know if I recall. And I was going through a very difficult season of my life, and I saw this guy persevere, and he ended up getting the Dall sheep, and just this crescendo of emotions between you and him, and the victory. And then I think that led me to the door of Trust the Guide. And I was like, man, the thing that endeared me to you, Billy, was your authenticity and your vulnerability. And there's not a lot of places in life where you can go where men take off their mask and can be real and vulnerable. And so I think that's how our relationship was birthed. And one of the things that I've enjoyed over the last year and a half is just the dialogue and getting to know you, coming out, being able to bring my, at the time, my 11-year-old son and go beaver hunting with you and your daughters and your family, and really forging that friendship. And then even last December, I was thinking today, I was like, being able to come out and do a road trip while I'm going through a divorce, through the most difficult season of my life, it gave me an escape to come up to Turtle Lake, Wisconsin, and just unplug for a few days and work on your cabin. And I just want to let you know that I'm very grateful for our friendship, and who knows where the Lord is going to lead it. But I love you as a brother. I love your energy. I love your just your heart, being around you and your daughters, and your heart for your family. You have an amazing heart, Billy, and I'm grateful for our friendship.
likewise, yeah, it's always kind of flattering. Like when my kids are like, "So who's this guy who's coming out? Stay with us? Where's he from? Do you know this guy?" And I've had a fair number of kind of crazy things like that. But anymore, like, I don't think that that's crazy. I think when I look back at it, it's like a lot of the my best friends are the people that I've hunted with oftentimes, because you go through something together or you share vulnerabilities. I don't have many buddies, because I always figure like I don't really care to just hang out with somebody and watch football and do the same stuff. It's like, if we're not doing something different, or there's nothing wrong with that, just a fishing buddy, there's really nothing wrong with that. But it's like, I want to get to know people. And I don't know, anymore, for me that's natural, and I don't think that's very natural for a lot of people, probably because I was forced to slow down in my job. You spend 10 days with somebody 24 hours a day, and it's just these people would open up. So I'd have people open up to me, and obviously that usually goes hand in hand. As one person opens up, the other one opens up. And and during that 25 years, one of the things that I can look back at now is I learned, 25 years being with men, is I learned that every man has an insecurity problems, multiple skeletons in his closet, if you will. And that gave me the confidence to be vulnerable, because I knew that no matter, they might not say it, but I knew that my vulnerability, they something of it will resonate. And as I became more vulnerable or open or just honest and authentic, that's when more people were attracted to my videos, because they found something that they weren't finding other places. And when I started out, I made hunting videos. Well, now I don't do that. I just make documentaries. I basically just make glorified home video. And some people don't like it, that's fine. But there's also someone who, just like you, if we're authentic and we're as much the person who God created us to be, the people that are supposed to be in our lives will come.
Yeah. So I want to, while we have you on here, I want to show that here. I'll show the audience the picture. That's in December. That's us framing out, and then this is the finished product. So this is kind of cool. This is the finished product of your of the cabin that I helped frame for that through 2-3 days. So it's just cool to see everything kind of come to a culmination. And I look forward to coming back up someday soon and spending some time in the Billy Molls cabin. Billy, I'm really grateful for your time. You've been very generous. Thank you for the last 50 minutes. Before we close, can you close us in prayer?
Yeah, absolutely. Heavenly Father, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank you for Jeff, his heart to share. Lord, I want to thank you for everything you've done for him. I want to thank you for everything that you're doing in him. And Lord, I ask that you be with his family. I ask that you be with him, give him guidance, and everyone who may be listening to this, particularly men that are raising families, men that are struggling with navigating through life, who are seeking you. And you promise that if we seek, we shall find. Lord, you command us to be still and know that you are God. Lord, I'd ask that you speak to us in your still small voice, each and every one of us. Give us guidance and direction. Lord, anybody who's watched this video to the end, they're seeking you. You know that. Lord, thank you for your love, your patience, your kindness, and each and every soul that's watching this. I just ask that you speak to them in the language that they best understand. And Lord, once again, just one more cry out for this nation, this world, for everyone who does seek you. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for your love. Help each and every person and understand your love, myself included. Let the fathers be examples for their children. Let the husbands love their wives as Christ loved the church. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Billy. For anybody watching this, if you'd like to be a guest, if you have an amazing story of hope and restoration to help set other men free, please visit our website at battleworthfighting.org, and we'd love to have you on as a guest. If you've also liked what you've seen, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us get our message out to a broader audience. Until next time, thanks for joining us.